consolidate in so we can get down there and see how many cars we can get within a mile of it.
I think we have 30 cars here now, so anyone who has extra room, raise your hand.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing extra.
I'm going to start talking whether you like it or not. Those that know me probably won't, but anyway, we're standing right here in the salt wash member of the Morrison Formation. And the salt wash extends basically from that white ledge that goes across there. You see a real white bed up in the slope. Pretty much from there, depending on how you want to, slice your cheese. Other people might say it goes up to the top of that sand bench up there, and the road runs right along it. And goes down to just below that ledge behind us. And just a little below that is the Tidwell member of the Morrison Formation. And that's the backside of the Entrada. And that's all Arches National Park right there, that whole dip slope there. We're only a half a mile from the edge of Arches National Park here. So we're pretty close to the park. And, the Morrison here, you get bone in the salt wash. We got a lot of sites further to the east in it. Hopefully one or two that'll be opened up someday. The Tidwell, of course, the University of Utah, and the Moab Museum are working on the Dystrophia site south of Moab, which is the oldest sauropod skeleton known in North America. Very important site, and actually the first dinosaur found in western North America back in the 1850s. So it's a very important site historically, as well as for the uniqueness of the age. This Tidwell is probably late Oxfordian, so it's about 159 million in there, and they're doing some new dating. But here's the salt wash member, and I generally call it at the clay change myself, because I recognize the clay change as a major regional unconformity, which is why it stands out on the plateau. It doesn't run around the whole planet. Places where you don't have such a big unconformity, and we're going to talk about that with the Jurassic Cretaceous unconformity as well, why there's sometimes you get deposition someplace and not others. But the clay change is right at that real bright white bed in the slope where you go from kind of orangey mud to purple mud sitting right above it. And as we walk through that, you'll notice the clay weathers very differently. The clays below in the salt wash are non-swelling clays. Oolitic clays, the kind of things that you could actually, if they were pure, you would do sculpting with, make pottery with. The clays above it have a high percentage of smectitic clays, montmorillonites, it's swelling clays that are found from the derivation of breaking down of volcanic ash. So at that point, the volcanic systems in the southwest, over in maybe southern Nevada, California, really started erupting in mass and laying a lot of ash. And the ash led to a completely different style of deposition. Now my wife's getting the knee replacement. But what we see here is this clay change. And, you look up here, obviously those muds look different than the muds down there. Over there you look at pale red muds, typical salt wash. Oolitic clays, smectitic clays dominate. And this is a style of weathering we call popcorn weathering. And you can kind of see why, the little nodule-looking puffs of clay, because when you wet that clay, it swells, turns into greasy gumbo, so if you're driving off-road, and you don't want to go near that stuff when it's wet, it's really nasty, much nastier than those pale red clays. Also, when you look at a slope profile, you can see it up there pretty good. You look at those red muds, abandoned, brushy basin muds there, swelling clays. It weathers in a convex profile. So they swell, they kind of, think of it pushing out, this convex profile. The overlying yellow cat is pretty much all oolitic clays, and once you hit the yellow cat, the slope profile changes dramatically. and gets to be more of a straight slope or convex weathering slope. So, you know, when you're mapping out here, and this is what our mapping guys do using air photos and whatnot, they pay a lot of attention to slope profile, because if you're mapping of a huge geographic area, as much as you would like, you can't walk over every square foot of it. So you need to use criteria that are useful. And color is pretty awful. You know, we don't use color as a mapping tool. But weathering profiles and things of that sort can be pretty useful. Much older than had been previously dated. You know, it's clearly older than any of the stuff in China or Korea. So that's pretty exciting. They may indeed be the oldest bird tracks anywhere in the world. Go up a little higher. Behind that rock.
Behind the rock.
I think that was an animal. People are looking at it.
Flat slab. Unless Lockley carried it out, which I kind of suspect. Second biggest slab of bird tracks. Gonna send Scott some footage for or BJ to put on the Utahraptor site.
This is the base of what again?
The Cretaceous.
So right there is Cretaceous, and then
And we got a date right behind you at Ironstone at 139 million.
okay, so
Hot to be read.
Wow.
so for this ironstone, like here, what do you do to
We pull zircons out.
date the zircon? But that doesn't tell you the date of that, does it?
No, but it tells you, you know, what the oldest zircons give us a good handle. Like if we were to sample this, we would get a Morrison date, because this is pretty much reworked Morrison, Jurassic. But once we get up into those fine-grained ironstones, we're looking at stuff that's much more derived at the time. And the oldest zircon's there, 139.
Okay, so there.
And the big calcrete up there, I think it's 136.
Okay.
And they got they're really comfortable with that date, with the calcrete. That's the onset of the rain shadow up there.
Are you able to tell from the zircons where the stuff came from?
You can tell the age of it.
But you can't tell came from.
Well, there's only one place. It's Southern California.
So everything's coming this way.
Yeah. There's no other volcanoes. I mean, but there's two, when we do like zircons, you know, in general in the Cedar Mountain, we have two peaks. We have one at about 133, 136, and then 139 we start getting more volcanics. But there is some volcanic activity, you know, that's pretty far back.
Right.
Just smaller little peaks. I mean, but they're distinctly peaks when you look at, you know, 10,000 grains. And they've done 10,000 zircons in this exposure here. So it's pretty, you know, 300 zircons per sample. So this is Stikes Quarry. Main block is at this level here. And if you look around, you see it's surrounded by red mudstones with nodules. Those are paleosol nodules. It's you know, not a really well-developed set of paleosols, but you know, it's floodplain deposits. Above here, you see this ripple bed. You can trace without almost a break all the way across. But then if you look outside, like over here, you see chunks of it down within the red bed. You see this block here down within it. Even when we look at the block as we open it, you realize there's fractures around the edge. Basically, you know, when we were excavating here, first we thought we had a channel. These red beds go all the way around. As soon as you go from the sand blob to some swirled clays in it, kind of like that dike in terms of consistency, into the red beds next to it, all the bone stops. Dead stop. Where in the block, you can't put an ice pick in without hitting skeletons. Really? Yeah, I mean, there's dozens of animals in there, packed together through about a meter of interval, over about a 3-meter wide blob. And there are a couple blobs a little higher that had bone as well. But you know, when we were first digging it, I started going, oh, we got a channel, you know, full of dinosaurs, and you know, we'll go in, and at some point we'll have to cut it off, you know, and collect this thing. And just so much stuff, you know, it's like, how are we going to do this? And, you know, we took a few things off the surface, came back, there'd been a big rock fall, you can see from up there. It's hard to see, but it was on the big cliff, the rock fall came down. So we come back here one day and there are big recliner and sofa-sized chunks of sandstone all over the quarry. And we had just moved a big block off the top, this blob, and we had rolled it over the front of the thing, so we had sandbagged it really good. And when we covered it, we left the sandbags there. So when these blocks came down, they came down on the sandbags. It still broke out 2 big chunks from the front of the main mass. And within them, we found part of the skull and jaw of an adult Utahraptor. But stuff we never knew we had before. And there's a paper getting ready to be submitted on the brain case. Got CT scanned at the American Museum. It's a real important specimen. And the front of the jaw is unique.
So
among theropods.
This came out in multiple blocks then?
Well, the main block, you know, which is, you know, was 9 tons. You know, 3 meters by 3 meters by 1 meter thick of, you know, the mass. But there were 2 smaller masses, blobs kind of to the side, and, you know, that little bit different assemblage of things in them. So we think they're separate events.
So this is why the road's here?
Yeah, basically, yeah. 'Cause we used to climb up. I mean, if you look behind you here, see that ridge? We climbed right up that ridge every day,
So you're not
carrying
500 pounds of plaster and 500 pounds of water.
more than that, several tons of water, several tons of plaster,
Total.
all the equipment. Yeah, not in one trip.
So you're not going to
Over the years, but
you're not going to slide it out on a car hood.
no, we took car hoods down here. In fact, there may still be a car hood down at the bottom. Yeah, but that was like the last.
Hey, I could use that.
Okay.
Hey, put it on my antique.
But yeah, we took, you know, we had plans. We actually built a bit of a track with a bobcat into that little bench below there, thinking, okay, we can slide the block to there, or get a, you know, a big track hoe that could pull it off to there.
Yeah.
And it was just no way. You know, we got to do it switchback, get it up to this level, you know, and dealing with the BLM is, you know, but fortunately they know who we are. We have a good reputation. It's mostly state, you know, it's a state land, and state, you know, pretty good working with me. Arches are real good. I was really expecting arches to just jump on us, because we are in sight of arches. People do hike up on those rocks and look over here, and they're, it's just going to look like another one of these uranium mines. They're all over. I mean, there's a couple big mines down below there. Just out of sight under that ledge.
Is that the Devil's Garden area just across there?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're right by arches. Yeah. In fact, you know, and personally, I think this is an important enough place that you include it just as a historic site in arches. You know, because this is, in my mind, this is the most important thing I've ever been involved with in 40 years of doing this. You know.
So Jim, can you?
I'm not going to live to see the work finished. You know, I mean, I know that. You get some sands, and basically it's a beach sequence. Then we get into those darker muds with little gray levels in between with ostracods and fish scales and things. That's obviously a deeper lake environment. Then as you're coming up the road, you see, you know, that stuff gets more and more sand. And then we get into this red bed interval, and you see these rounded masses over there. Is probably the best thing. You know, some soils, maybe even filled burrows in there. So this would be the floodplain. You know, so the lake is retreated, and we actually have a shoreline that's probably rooted. You know, we do get insect burrows in there and things like that. But then the lake comes in again, probably not as deep, because we don't see any facies that look as deep as that stuff down there. You know, and we get this ripple bedded unit coming in, and probably at some point, because you see a little bit more red beds again, you know, you got it saturated with water, then lake levels again dropped, and as it dropped, things started compacting. And when you're squishing it down, the water's got to go somewhere. So the water started coming up in a pipe, bringing sand probably from the shorelines and some of those intermediate sandy beds, because sand moves easier than clay, and made a big sand pipe that's probably centered you know, like right about here. I mean, the edge of the hill, you know, quarry was here. You can see how steep this thing was when we were first up here. It was, you know, clinging on for your life. And we had the edge of the block here, so we didn't have that side. But as we dug it, you know, we see this red mudstone all the way around it. And basically what it was a sand volcano. And at first, of course, the river channel, you have to chop it off, or maybe the shoreline of a lake. So, you know, you have a sheet of sand or an abandoned pond, you know, sand bottom of an abandoned pond, and they all died in a drought, you know, what are the scenarios and what's the geometry of those bone beds? So this is seriously a bone bed, we knew that. You know, there's a lot of skeletons in this thing. But we're coming here and we're realizing it's about this thick. And just come to these like straight edges and just stop against this red clay. And we went around and it stopped behind. You know, and we realized it's just this big mass of sand. And then we see right in here, there was one of these dikes coming up from below right into it. There's this big sandstone dike coming into it with pebbles in it that had brought up from the shore, you know, from these shoreline deposits, you know, was feeding this thing. And we realized, you know, this was a big, you know, sand deposit. You got some pictures in your handout showing some things down in the Lake Powell Delta. Because when I was working on this, I was just like, man, you know, I think this is a dewatering thing, but, you know, the scale. And I was helping co-lead a board meeting trip for the survey. And we stopped at the rest view area above Height Crossing. And looking down at the delta, of course, lake levels are way down. I'm looking down in this red mud coming out, and the river's this little thing going around this big red mud pile. And all of a sudden I realized there's sand stuff coming up here with little creeks going back down to the lake. These are sand volcanoes, and it's from compacting because the lake's going down and it's compacting. And the way it's coming up, it's pulling the sand up because the sand can move a lot easier than clay. So once you get a crack, you start sucking the sand up, and that's what quicksand is. Except in reality, these animals want to be like a Tarzan movie, you know, where there's like, oh, you're going to grab the dinosaur's finger before it's too late as they sink in because you're more buoyant than quicksand. Yeah. You get stuck in it really well. And we got part of a iguanodonts in here, a couple of iguanodonts, a juvenile and a bigger one. And who knows if more of it was off the hill. But, you know, as bait. And we think it brought in a couple packs of Utahraptor, one pack or two pack, we don't know. We got a lot. That's why we got to be careful extracting and documenting, you know, this thing as we take apart Tut's tomb for Utahraptor. But they got caught in this stuff, and when the thing collapsed, when you took the hydraulic head off it, you know, it's the water coming up that's keeping this thing intact. All of a sudden you take that water off it, lays off, the whole thing collapses. You get these echelon faults going around, and if you look at the pictures, they have stuff on the Lake Powell Delta. Ed Simpson, who's second author on this paper, should be senior author. He's like, well, you're the one that figured it out. Yeah, you're the guy who knows these features. But anyway, Ed, you know, he's got pictures of these things on the Delta, the same scale as this stuff. And it's like, it's the same thing, you know, and if you had cattle on that thing, you'd be trapping cows in it. They would die, and then when these things collapsed into the delta, you know, they would get buried, you know. And if it happens again, you know, water comes back up through this thing, and you have defleshed skeletons in there. It's going to kind of pull them apart some. And we see a lot of that in the site. Remember I said there were a couple blobs up higher. The water was coming back through the site some, and it pulled the skeletons apart in sections. So you have strings of vertebrae and arms and stuff, and they're kind of getting, you know, rearranged as the water would come back up through this thing. So we're mapping it really carefully. We've already now started documenting around the edge some little layers of carbonate that we think might be algal. And we're sending,
where are you excavating now? Are you going down?
we're done. We collected the entire site in one piece.
Where everybody's standing.
Okay.
Yeah, we're standing where it was.
Size of a small pickup truck.
When we built the
hood of it
you know, the beams under it, you know, Phil designed the sled that we did and prefabbed it. So we put it together like an IKEA around this thing, and it fit. It snapped together. IKEA would be proud of it, you know, because it went together together tight as a tick. I mean, it was amazing. With, you know, bolts this long, this big around, nuts this big.
Pipes.
You know, oh yeah. I mean, we had to dig under to get the bolts under the frames. You know, we ended up having to dig these giant holes just to get them up under these beams into place. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do. You know, it took us a full week to put the frame on it. And when we got the frame in, got it all shored up and tight up against it, you know, and then dug out under it, you know, separated the pedestal and plastered under that thing. That block hadn't moved when it was completely separate and on the sled a millimeter, you know, from where it was originally. I mean, we completely took the world away from it. And then when the track hoe hooked up to it, I was sitting right there looking that way. You know, just waiting for the whole thing to go boom.
So, Jim, how long did it take you guys to dig this up?
We worked on it, I mean, off and on. We were never funded. You know, I mean, it was like end of the year money type of thing. So we worked on it for about 10 years. Yeah. Yeah. It was like, you know, we tried to give it away at first to Washington University in St. Louis. And their program crashed and burned. Karen Poole, who's still working with us on the iguanodonts, she pulled a master's out of that fiasco. And she's now a PhD doing a postdoc at Stony Brook. But, you know, it kind of collapsed. And then when we came out, and, you know, to deal with it again after that, that's when we had the rock fall. And that took pretty much that season dealing with that. You know, and salvaging and the pieces. We still have a lot of stuff wrapped from the rockfall, you know, event, and that was in 2007. So it progressed slowly. A few weeks this year, a few weeks that. But we had no clue. You know, Don DeBlue loves to joke that if we knew what we had, we would have walked away. You know, because we got a serious tiger by the tail. That's why we have the GoFundMe site. Because I'm not going to live to see this project done. I mean, it's it's got to take. It's at North American Museum, the Museum of Ancient Life. Even though it still says North American Museum of Ancient Life, but they don't use North America anymore. But it's still on the front of their building. I don't care.
Scott Madsen does that work.
Yeah, Scott's we're raising money to pay Scott. You know, and Scott's one of the best preparators on the planet. And a lot of the money we raised was to buy high-resolution microscopes on big hospital boom stands that we could get out over the block. This all got to get prepped under a microscope. You know, and we got baby skulls. We're always keep finding skull after skull. You know, juveniles. You know, and one of the things exciting is we have one adult. We have at least 3, maybe 4 babies now. Things that would have skulls this big, and adult skulls like that. You know, the baby skulls are like that, and they fall apart. You know, there's just all these little paper-thin bones with teeth in them still, all the teeth through all the jaws. Then we got maybe 5 skulls that would be a little bigger than a velociraptor skull. And then we got part of a leg and a foot of an intermediate animal, bigger than what we think of as the 2-year-old juveniles. You know, some intermediate, and then the big adult at this point. But what I see happening is that these guys will have a nest, 30 eggs. They have a lot of eggs at a time, and the young would hatch and follow the adults. You know, and be the beginning of the pack. Next generation do it. That's why we have the size classes, because they're really distinct size classes in these animals. And we got the 1-year-olds or 9-month-olds, the 1-year, 9-month-olds, something intermediate, and then the adult, and it's hard. The middle stuff is less. I figure the young ones are cannon fodder. Because in a lifetime, these guys might have something like 1,500 young. A healthy population, 2 of them are going to make it. Yeah, I mean, if things go right. In a really good year, maybe you get 4 or 5 make it. But generally 2, sometimes 1, sometimes none. But those young animals, you got a pack of them, and there's like 30 or 40 little ones running around with the big ones that are making the kills. And they're stirring up the herds, causing disruption and whatnot, as little ones do.
Things haven't changed.
But they're cannon fodder. I mean, that's what, they're being killed off probably when they're attacking big animals, left and right. Big sauropod, just swack his tail, take 10 of them at a time. It's just, but we're learning stuff about this. you know, some of this I'm just telling you is supposition on still limited data, but we're going to have a lot more data. It's got to keep coming. We're trying to map this whole thing using photogrammetry and 3D, full color 3D, you know, very detailed mapping the entire block as we unroof everything.
Have you started taking those pictures, the photographs?
We just been bought the equipment. We got the programs and stuff, and we know how to do it. In fact, next Tuesday, Brent Breithaupt is coming in. He's one of the experts to give us some pointers. We know pretty much what we're doing. We've taken a couple short courses. You know, Don will be in charge of that part of it.
Yeah.
And the last thing we need to buy is a boom camera stand, you know, that stands about that tall, you know, which has an arm that goes out horizontally that we can put across the block, and that we can crank in and out to overlap the pictures and lines, and we'll move the whole stand in and out. You got to have overlapping pictures, you know. And the exact height isn't that critical, because the new software is amazing. You know, corrects for spherical aberration of lenses and everything automatically. But you pay $3,000 for that. But you pay the $3,000, and you can throw a pen down and use your phone and get good 3D images with this thing. But if you're using a good Nikon, you know, fairly wide angle, even lighting, you know, ring light, you don't want any shadows, the thing will create 3D models you can measure to 1/100th of a millimeter.